Noon, and yes, there we go. And welcome to everyone to the June 2nd, 2025 briefing of the Forsyth County Commissioners. We actually have one discussion item. We have the Forsyth Tech quarterly report, and I think we're going to do that first, and then we'll get to our briefing. So please always to welcome Dr. Janet Spriggs, President of Forsyth Tech Community College, and always enjoy your updates.
Thank you so much. I think I'm getting technical assistance.
There you go.
Which I very much appreciate. Okay, and let me go, starting at the back, let me go back to the front. Okay. Thank you all so much. It's very good to see you all, and I appreciate the opportunity, as always, to talk about the great things that are happening at your community college. I'm going to start out with some good information about enrollment. I always tell our staff and faculty that we're not in the business of chasing FTE. That's how we get paid, and I have to worry about that on a regular basis, as does my leadership team and our trustees. But I want our staff and faculty to focus on the impact they're having on students. So we don't chase FTE, but we do chase students, because we know that the first part of our job is to get them there. Once we have them at the college, then we can do our best work to try to get them to where they ultimately can be. So good news on our spring enrollment, and I'm going to show you enrollment in 3 different buckets today, because generally I just talk about overall enrollment, and I think it's important for all of us to understand that the community college, again, we're celebrating our 65th year of serving these communities, is about curriculum programs that lead to degrees, that might lead to work with an associate in applied science, or that might lead to a university for transfer. But we also do a lot of workforce short-term programming, and we do basic skills education as well, which are all critical components. So starting with curriculum, you can see here a trend. Over the past year, this is spring enrollment. We just finished our spring semester and started our summer semester. Interestingly, our summer semester is about 6.5% higher than it was last year, but we ended our spring semester with 5% growth from last spring. And when we take a look at over time since 2019, which was right before the pandemic, we've increased enrollment at Forsyth Tech in just curriculum programs by 24%. So I think we're doing a really good job of getting the word out about the amazing opportunity that the community college offers, and doing a better job of partnering and recruiting within our high schools as well. When we look at continuing education, we are up in continuing education. This is on an academic year basis, because we have not completed spring enrollment for continuing education. We won't do that until June. So just to show you on an academic year basis, we're up another 0.6% from last year. I think next year, when I come and show you this after we complete this year, you'll see some really big improvement in Con Ed. We've been working more intentionally on building programs that start with certificate opportunities and diplomas, and then ladder up to the degrees. So our enrollment is growing there, and I think you'll see a big jump for next year. And then our basic skills enrollment has grown substantially. We've made some changes and had some new initiatives and some great leadership with that team, and we're up 19.6 percentage points from academic year 2023 to academic year 2024. So just good news all around about our enrollment that I wanted to make sure I shared with you while I was here today. And now I'll walk through our capital projects update so that you can see the progress that we're making on our capital improvement projects that are county funded. These are pictures from the Transportation Center. Many of you were with us a few months ago when we had our ribbon cutting groundbreaking, celebration. Now we're about to have a ribbon cutting celebration as well, and I'll invite you to that. But this is a picture of the almost completed building. It says here that the completion was scheduled for 5/28. That did occur last week on the 28th, and there are very minor punch list items that were identified. We are expecting by Wednesday that we will have our certificate of completion on this project. Our ribbon cutting is scheduled for 6/14. That's a Saturday morning. I'd love for you all to be there. We'll send an official email. It's going to be at the Transportation Center, and it's in conjunction with our car show, which we call a cruise in, which is always really a lot of fun to see some of the awesome vehicles that are brought in. That project has been just amazing. It was ahead of schedule. schedule. Everything with the contractor has just been fantastic, our architect, our designer, and the new space is going to be transformational. It's adding on so that we can have more students, but also more programs, and it's giving us space for equipment that is state-of-the-art, used in the field today, that we're really excited about deploying. So I can't wait for you to see it. We've also almost completed, or very, very close to completing. It says 100% construction complete, which is true, but I don't think we've had, well, actually, they updated it for me, so it has been complete. I was out last week, and before I left, they hadn't had the state construction sign-off, but we evidently did get that last week. So we're all in our maintenance facility, the newly expanded facility, and it's looking great. Our courtyard project, this is county bond dollars also that paid for this, is continuing. It will be finished a little bit later this summer, hopefully by the end of this month is what we anticipate. And you can see some of the work being done on the right here, and on the left, a finished part of that project. This is the connecting points between the buildings and is creating the quad that will connect ultimately to the Learning Commons project, which is the next project. This is the 45,000 square feet final project of the bond dollars. We are still working with our architect and our construction manager at Risk, and with the state. This project, as you all will recall, was planned back prior to 2016's bond, and now we are operating in 2025 dollars, which is meaning that we cannot build what we thought we could build with that amount of money any longer, and we're about $12 million short on what we needed. I'm working with our state legislators. I have a little bit of optimism still that they might be able to come through with some SCIF dollars, which are basically capital improvement dollars from the state, to help us make up that difference. But we also have two different plans that we're talking with our trustees and with our designer and contractor, construction manager at Risk with, that will basically shell in parts of the building that we could then go back and finish at a later date. So I'll have more at my next update on what path we're able to take there, but still being hopefully optimistic that we might be able to get that money from another source, and I'll keep you posted. Just a few pictures. I know a few of you were able to attend the visit that we had from the governor. Governor Josh Stein came to the Transportation Center and made a big announcement about a new workforce council that I think is a bipartisan effort at the North Carolina General Assembly, the Department of Labor, the Secretary of State's office, and the community college. And so it was an honor to be able to host so many dignitaries and to show them around that wonderful facility. The governor was able to participate in the racing simulator. I would invite any of you, if you'd like to be my guest and come out and race any of the tracks with me, I'd be happy to show you that technology in action. He hit the wall pretty quickly, as did I the first time. But I recovered on the second trip around Richmond International Raceway, and I think you would really enjoy that. So let me know if you'd like to come out. Our motorsports students are quite excited to show off that equipment and talk to you about that program. I really just wanted you to know that we are moving forward with our athletics program. Our athletics are not funded by any county dollars or any public dollars, but we've got great community support and private donor support for launching athletics. Our esports team, which you see in the middle, the computers there, I was not very familiar with esports, but we have already launched that program, and I'm happy to say we were not eligible for tournament play in this first year, but we would have won the whole thing. Our esports team just did phenomenal. They had a couple of losses out of all their whole schedule, so it's been really fun to watch these high-tech esports take off. We are launching our volleyball in August. I would love for all of you to be my guest at our first, and we'll send an official invitation, but our first home volleyball match at our West Campus, which is where the gym is located. And then in October, we will launch our basketball. We have signed many athletes from our local high schools, and so you'll get to see some of our hometown stars really taking off in our programs. And I think the last picture that I wanted to share with you is just a few pictures from our graduation ceremony, which was on May 7th. You may have seen in the news, our news release, that we had the biggest ceremony that we've ever had. We had over 1,000 students who were there to walk across the stage that evening. And we had 1,618 total graduates for this year. So that's always one of the most special parts of the evening. I don't have it here, but my favorite photo from that evening is a young mother who has her stroller with her baby in it. She has her cap and gown on, and her baby has a cap and gown on as well. He's our future trailblazer, but we were just thrilled to be able to celebrate so many lives that are definitely changed because of the power of education and the opportunity that we have to serve them to success and to prepare them for careers right here at home. And I think that is all that I had for my update today. I know you guys have a busy schedule, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for me.
Questions for Jen?
I did a great
Briggs,
job.
we appreciate your reports.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good.
And
Thank you.
Ashley, I'm not sure how to get you back to where you need to be. Okay. Awesome.
All righty. Madam County Manager, can review the agenda for Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioner, staff, and guests. Agenda item number 1 is a public hearing on the zoning petition of Kernersville Little League Baseball, Inc. from HBS to RS40. Chris Murphy, our planning director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon. This is a request of Kernersville Little League to rezone 6.89 acres of property located at the western terminus of Tunstall Road, north of Sahibi Road, from HBS, Highway Business Special Use, to RS40 residential building, single family. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map. It is located within GMA 5, and it literally is just slightly west of the Guilford County and Forsyth County line. This is the subject property shown in yellow. It is a piece of property that was, I'm assuming, a remnant property of this original subdivision that was built in the 60s and 70s. This property was rezoned back in 1987 by the Board of County Commissioners from R6 to B3S, which translated when we did the UDO back in 1995 to HBS, but it was for outdoor recreation, commercial recreation. It was contentious when it was rezoned. The commissioners did rezone it by a 3-2 vote, but it was rezoned, and it was used for several years by Kernersville Little League. This was built by a Mr. Parrish in the mid-70s, and he got caught in a little bit of a zoning violation as it continued to become more and more popular, and they made him go through and get this property rezoned, and then after that it was sold to Kernersville Little League. Just a little more history than normal, just trying to provide a little context to how this HBS ended up on the map. This is the subject property shown on the countywide aerial imagery. It hasn't been used very much over the last several years. I want to say maybe a practice or two a year, but they have not had any games or anything actually at this location. And I think Kernersville Little League considers it surplus property and would like to rezone it and sell it for residential use. Since this is in the rural policy area, there is no site-specific recommendation. The Northeast Rural Area Study generally recommends large lot residential development in this immediate area, but again, we don't have any parcel-specific recommendations. If you notice, it is adjacent to all RS40 or AG zoned properties, so the request is more than likely consistent with looking at that zoning pattern. This is looking west into the subject property from Tunstall Road. This is looking west into the subject property also from Tunstall Road. You do see a picnic shelter, some fencing, that cleared area. That's where the fields are themselves. This area right here was a little bit of parking area that was associated with this, again, back when it was built in the 1970s. This is looking east along Tunstall Road from the subject property. So this is looking back down towards Sahibi. So this is the driveway that comes up and serves this property. This is looking north from Sahibi Road on the Tunstall Road. That's where the directional sign was included for this case. In summary, this request is consistent with the general recommendations of both Legacy 2030 and the Northeast Rural Area Study. The request would rezone the property to a zoning district that is consistent with the surrounding property and land use pattern. The request would allow for the redevelopment of the site to compatible single-family and/or agricultural land uses. The request returns the property to a zoning classification consistent with its pre-1987 rezoning to HBS or B3S. This was heard by the Planning Board at their May 2025 public hearing. There was one speaker in opposition, and she had concerns centered on the uncertainty of the request. Wanted to know specifically what was going to be happening and the perceived lack of notice, even though she herself did receive notice. She didn't think that her neighbors received notice. But again, we have a 500-foot notification area, so not everyone would have received notice. In spite of that, following the public hearing, the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of this request to the Board of County Commissioners. And with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Chris?
Just a clarification. You mentioned earlier rezoning to RS40 in agriculture. It looks like it's just to RS40. Is that correct?
It is being rezoned just to RS40. I'm saying in the vicinity, there's RS40 and AG property. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? All righty. Thank you.
Agenda item number 2 is a resolution declaring June 15th as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and we will have the team from DSS here to receive that. Agenda item number 3 is approval of minutes for the meetings of May 19th and May 22nd. Madam Clerk, have those been emailed?
Our plan is to get them out tomorrow.
Great, thank you. Agenda item number 4 is an amendment to the State Public School Building Capital Fund Grant Project Ordinance to close the 2013 and 2015 school bond. Adam Fernbach from our Finance Department will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This item would authorize reports to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction for the 2022-23 and 23-24 lottery proceeds items. These are things that happened last year and the year before. It's just closing out the reports, sending the notice to the state that we received these funds. We use them to retire indebtedness from the 2013 and 2015 refunding bonds. And it would also adjust the grant project ordinance for the State Public School Building Capital Fund to reflect that those are no longer active ongoing projects. The new applications for the current year should be arriving in the next meeting. So if there's any questions, I can answer them.
Questions for Adam?
Yes, Adam, if you can. If you could help me just kind of explain to the public the roles and responsibilities of the school system, how the lottery works, if you don't mind explaining that a little bit.
Yeah, so across the state, folks play the lottery. Those funds are received by the lottery proceeds work their way to the state. They go to the Department of Public Instruction. The Department of Instruction publishes estimates for each local education authority. I don't quite know what LEA, I don't know what the A stands for in LEA, but every LEA gets a estimate of what their share of the statewide lottery proceeds are for the current year. And at that point, that's where I start working with the schools. I draw up the applications and submit those to the schools. The schools need to make a finding that there is no ongoing capital need for these specific proceeds and that the use for them ought to be to retire indebtedness for school construction in a prior period. So for us right now, as part of our 2006 education debt leveling plan, that is where the proceeds are accounted for as or the ultimate place where the proceeds are accounted for as revenue. They will go into the State Public School Building Capital Fund Grant Project Ordinance, at which point they will then be received in that fund and then transferred to the Debt Leveling Plans Fund. But, so right now, the indebtedness that we're working on retiring is back from the 2007 education bonds, but those bonds were refunded in 2013 and 2015. So it's necessary for the school board to make that finding and resolution, and then the county and the school board together submit joint applications to the state for the lottery proceeds. Those applications are signed by the school board chair and by Dr. Martin once they are approved by both bodies.
That was very helpful. So my next question is to Madam Manager Robinson. Has that process taken place yet?
Yes, the school board took action on their part in their, I'm going to forget the date, but it was in the middle of May. Yes,
Okay, so they
there was
recently
a
have done
clerical
that.
issue with one of the documents that prevented it from being on this current agenda. But the schools are aware of it. They're working on getting it corrected and signed. And so that's where that stands.
Thank you. All of that was helpful.
Thank you.
Before you go. That's all right. Commissioner McDaniel's already asked some of the questions that I was interested in having clarified. In the application that the school board is working now on correcting clerical errors, what will this year's allotment be going for?
Excellent question. This year's allotment is, and I'm working off memory here, $3,657,177.
And what will it be directed to? Do we know that?
Yes, it will go, $650,000 will go towards retiring 2013 refunding debt, and the balance will go towards retiring 2015 refunding debt. And both those refunding issues were refundings of in whole and in part, or in part and then in whole, I think, of the 2007 education facilities debt.
Are we required to use those proceeds for the oldest debts, or can they be directed to other uses? Other school capital uses?
Yeah, so our current debt plan, all our debt planning is based upon the approximately $3.5 million of lottery proceeds flowing into retiring debt that is covered by the 2006 education debt leveling plan. So if we were to not use it, there'd be a budgetary impact because, we do need to budget for that retirement of debt. But as far as could it be used for something else, that's a policy choice by both boards. That's not that's above me.
Thank you.
My kind of memory of that when the lottery was created was that the school board agreed at that point to actually dedicate lottery funds to debt retirement forever, in perpetuity, basically. And it seems like there were documents assigned and approved at that time, and yes, the money came in annually, and the board, basically verified, that it was for debt service. But I think there was a clear understanding at the outset that that was the purpose of the lottery funds, would be to retire debt. That's an interesting question to the long ago documentation of what it was when it was created. But
We can probably, that's my understanding as well, but I'm sure we can find those documents.
it's good. Any other questions for Adam? Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 5 is an amendment to the fiscal year 25 budget ordinance to appropriate Operation Fan Heat Relief Program funding allocation for the Forsyth County Department of Social Services to continue administration of the program. Ray Stafford from our Social Services Department will brief this item.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I am standing before you to request that the $3,275, which has been appropriated to the county, be used for Operation Fan Heat Relief. This is a program that we're operating to provide heat relief for seniors and disabled adults in our county. We use the funds to purchase electric fans that are used in their homes. The customers are able to receive the fans at the agency, or we make them available by taking them to them in the community. At this point, we are distributing to adults, again, who are age 60 and older, and those with a reported disability. No county funding is involved. The funds are directed to the county from the Area Agency on Aging, with the funds coming from energy providers, such as Duke Energy of the Carolinas, Duke Energy Progress, and Dominion Resources. Any
Questions for Terry?
for me?
As as long as you're here and talking about the program.
Okay.
I'm interested, about what does it cost you per fan?
That is, depending on the market rate now.
Ballpark.
Ballpark, I've been out looking and just, retailers are selling the fans that we distribute for about $15 to $20 each this year, which is an increase from last year. So, of course, one of the things that we were blessed to have this year is a surplus that we were able to carry over, because since we started distributing fans on May 5th, we've almost distributed 125 fans just from last year's surplus. So,
Do you have a waiting list, or, I mean, normal years, or?
no, right now we don't have a waiting list, thankfully. When citizens contact us, we immediately contact them and get the fans out to them. So I check every week. We have no one waiting currently.
I would be interested in, just for a general background
Sure.
information on the program, about how many we distribute a year.
And our director is here, and he may be able to help me with the final numbers. Rick, do you recall how many we distributed last fiscal year?
Would you say you have 3,000 and what dollars?
$3,275.
If it's 15, it's 218.
Yeah, and I believe that actually that amount may be a little bit higher this year. 2 years ago is when we saw a real surge in the fan costs. It was running between 15 and 17. It may be, I'm pretty sure it may be over $20 a fan now, probably even closer to $25 a fan. So unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. And we do get fairly competitive rates, but we don't have any real big bulk rates. But to answer your question, we usually distribute somewhere between 100 and 130 fans each year.
Okay, thank you.
Are these floor, wall, window, door, hand, or
Box fans.
a what?
A box fan. So it's a freestanding fan that it's not meant purposely to be put into a window, but it could be put into a window if it was just propped up. Got a metal frame around the outside with usually plastic on either side to.
You know, it would appear with basically, I mean, every county receives these funds. And you would think that maybe our state contract could add fans, because the bad thing about state price contracts, they usually get year values and the thing and high numbers, and so you can buy it cheaper a lot of times. But I would think on something that is purchased typically in May, they could be bid statewide, literally for the month of May and June, and that would be, you'd lock into a price that was reasonable every year, and every county would benefit from doing that. And I'm sure the state price contract folks have capacity to add a specification for a box fan.
I would certainly
Maybe,
agree.
how could that get pursued pretty easily? I mean, I don't know, I'm sure our county city purchasing works with the state price contract people, knows who they are. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, because quite frankly, I could see that being, if you just go into the store to buy them, that could be all kinds of, subject to the vagaries of the market in a different way.
It is. Yeah, our goal has always been to purchase the least expensive fan that's UL listed, so we know that the safety concerns are met.
Yeah, but then that's even to waste it on our time. Looks like that's a great thing for the state to be helpful for,
Yes,
in
we
that sense.
agree with you.
I don't know, Madam County Manager, can you make a note that maybe our purchasing folks, take a look at that? That's a reasonable thing for the whole state. I can't believe somebody hadn't done that before.
Yes, sir.
With the with the summers getting hotter, on average over time, it's more of an issue, threat, particularly to older folks. I remember when I was working as a staff lawyer for a legal aid office down in New Bern on the coast, and the apartment I could afford didn't have air conditioning. That the box fan in my apartment was a lifesaver. So
And oftentimes, if there's a need, we have to distribute more than one
Yeah.
in a household.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 6 is a resolution authorizing the appropriation of interest earnings in the Pandemic Response Special Revenue Fund and transfer to the general fund and an associated amendment to do so. Kyle Wolf, our budget director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. And so, as you'll recall, I think in our March, I know in our April budget workshop, we've talked about fund balance over the course of these months. And one of the things that we had mentioned in our April workshop was that we would be appropriating some funds from interest earnings. And so that's what this is. It is appropriating $1,200,000 of available interest earnings from the American Rescue Plan Act in our Pandemic Response Fund. And we are essentially transferring these dollars to the general fund in order to mitigate the amount of fund balance that we may be required to use at the end of this fiscal year. So this is really, we've talked about it back in April, and this is just moving those funds.
Yeah, that had been, when I read this item, my question was, I did not remember that discussion.
We talked about some
from
project
budget workshops.
savings and also interest earnings for
I
our.
just was curious whether that had kind of been accounted for.
Yes,
But
sir.
the other question I had when I thought about it was, what is kind of the, we're still holding, there were a couple of capital projects that could be longer on ARPA funds. So what's kind of roughly that balance now? And it's to be spent by December 26 or 25?
26,
26, I think.
I believe it was December 26th. And so I'm not sure what that number is, but I can get it for you.
I mean, I was just kind of curious, because that's kind of, because we should be getting some interest, certainly in FY '25.
Correct.
In FY '26.
Right.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 7 is a resolution authorizing execution of a second amendment to the agreement with the Masters Touch LLC for printing, processing, and mailing services. Mike Pollock, our interim tax assessor collector, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This resolution authorizes the execution of a second amendment to the agreement with Masters Touch LLC for printing, processing, and mail services. This amendment would increase the current agreement of the contract by $70,000 to allow the county to pay Masters Touch LLC for the 2025 reappraisal notices that were printed and mailed in February. It was brought to the attention of the tax department that the cost to print and mail the 2025 reappraisal notices was not included in the original contract amount authorized for fiscal year 2025. However, I want to assure the county commissioners that this money currently and has always existed in the tax department budget for this fiscal year. The money needs to be added to the contract so that the vendor can be paid from our budget for the service that has been rendered. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Since it was not in the original bid in this whatever three-year period from 22 to 25, did they give the unit prices that they guaranteed in that bid before? I'm just kind of curious whether
Yes,
the charge was consistent with the bid from 22 that was locked in on the services provided.
It is consistent with that. It just, it was an oversight by a former employee that it was included in the contract that was signed.
Got it. And the only other question I had is that when I guess we're getting ready to rebid this, or I don't know if we have already, for the next three-year cycle, I'm kind of, because our estimates of the numbers of services required were clearly not a huge amount below, but probably 15% below. I mean, we underestimated by about 15% of our needs. I just wanted to make sure in the bid process, we had a very competitive opportunity, sometimes more stuff, lower bids in the next cycle. And I don't know how competitive this is for people that provide the service. I just don't know, but I assume we're getting ready for another cycle.
Yes, we've already received bids in, and so we're through the process of selecting a print vendor from that process.
And do we feel like the number we asked people to bid on was maybe more than what we did 3 years ago, the services? Because it's so many mailings, it's so many printing, it's so many whatever, and those guys are figuring unit prices and figuring based on a volume. I'm just kind of curious if we changed our specs to include a larger quantity of items, of things, services.
We did
I'm
not.
missing, I see you're looking puzzled.
No, no, so we didn't.
Am I missing something
I'm sorry,
in
no,
the
we
way
did not
I'm asking
include
that question?
additional services. We rebid this every about 3 years, and so every other year, we need to have the reappraisal notices in there.
Right.
So it'd actually be less for this cycle because the reappraisal notices would not be in those.
Yes. Whatever in a particular year of what's going on, that our numbers are the appropriate kind of a number that we're out there.
Yes, our mailings would be similar for our other activities as they were in previous years, where we do increase our parcel count every few years, every year that we bid out, but it's not a huge difference.
Right, so in this cycle, it'll be fewer inspect than there were in the last cycle because of the reappraisal.
That's correct.
All right, thanks. Sorry to, it's a little minutia, but got it. Any other questions for Mike?
Thank you.
Agenda item number 8 is a resolution authorizing the use of a fuel credit card program for the purchase of gasoline, diesel, and other designated motor fuels at stations with extensive accessibility. Chelsea Swaim, our Deputy General Services Director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Board. Since 2019, the county has utilized WEX Inc. under state contract terms for the purchase of fuel at retail gas stations for the increased accessibility and convenience of drivers not having to always go back to our Liberty Street fuel pumps whenever they need gas in the county-owned fleet vehicles. In 2021, the board approved the use of the WEX program under state contract terms, and since that time, State Contract 1510A has been extended, so the contract is now effective through September 7th, 2025. And this item just allows the county to continue to utilize that program under the extended terms at an annual amount up to $1,500,000. And we would continue to receive our 1.75% volume rebate, as well as rebates based on the timing that we remit payment to the vendor. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Only curiosity question, and it is a curiosity question. It used to be those old, I can't remember these things called, it was called a Fuel Man card, which is similar, I assume, same kind of thing. This is another iteration of that. And you actually got the prices, the local government got the prices at the state price contract. It was because it didn't have state taxes on it and it was already adjusted. Is that kind of the, I mean, I'm trying to think if somebody pulls into an Exxon, a sheriff's deputy, running out of gas, pulls into an Exxon and wherever, Walkertown, Rural Hall, and gets gas and uses that card, which is makes perfectly, that's why we're getting it. I'm kind of curious what price we're paying. It looks like we're getting a 1.75% of total cost rebate from the company, yes. But is the cost of the fuel, I mean, there can be 30 and 40 cents a gallon difference in the cost of fuel between, service outlets now across just in short distances. I'm kind of curious if we're getting a state price contract amount for the fuel as well as the rebate for the service. I'm not sure what we're getting. Is it just a retail price wherever it is?
Yes, that's my understanding. I will double check that though. My understanding is we just get the volume rebate.
Wow, could be.
But I will double check that.
Be an interesting thought, because I imagine sheriff's deputies are probably some of the key users of that, I would think. I don't know, but I mean, it looks to me that's worth a little study, because we might want to be thinking about stations that typically have, kind of some of the independents and others that are a little lower in price, and identify those. Otherwise, we could be paying lots of money for that, and we're just only getting the 1.75 back. Anyway, go ahead.
Just Mr. Cheap here with a tip. If you know where Parkland High School is, there is a right across Peters Creek Parkway from the corner where Parkland School is. You've got 2 gas stations chains in a long-term price war. There's a BP and a Sheetz. And so far as I can tell, that's currently the cheapest gas in town. Folks who are based here and want to go will basically go any place that's pretty close to the city center. I recommend it.
Good to know. Thank you.
My only question is, are we monitoring the use of gas from month to month to just kind of see where we're at, if we're increasing or?
We do. We get an invoice each month. I have a graph here. Well, we're right around track of where we are historically from last year, so it does vary a little bit. But yes, we do monitor that. We've actually seen a little bit of a decrease in prices this year since November. They're beginning to uptick a little, but yes, ma'am, we do.
For me, I think I'm pretty curious as well. I'd probably like to see that report, see where the departments, who's using what.
Yes, ma'am, we can get you that.
Thank you.
The other thing I would just interject on that is that we
gave us
do, outside of that, we do have a lot of take-home vehicles. And take-home vehicles means that we are paying for gas for individuals that may live a long ways away from Forsyth County. So that's just something for you to know and something we can certainly discuss, but that certainly has an impact on the amount that we're spending on gasoline.
Probably an avenue for future exploration, because there's some ways to kind of do that where you actually just charge the person, an amount that's pretty, it's a single sort of calculation from the, work base to home, excuse me, and you are able to just calculate that, and they're covering that. And then that way they're not inhibited by when they get fuels. They still have because for a number of people that need to respond quickly to come in and get a vehicle, do that, and then go to respond is a very difficult issue. But there's a way to recoup part of that in a way that you could actually. I mean, there are all kinds of ways. Having done that very thing myself with employees in the past, that it can work, and you get the convenience as well as some of the cost paid of that benefit.
The other thing I would say is the majority of our departments, they are not allowed to take home vehicles if they live outside Forsyth County. So if they live outside Forsyth County, they have to park it at like the nearest fire station, and then they retrieve their vehicle from there. The sheriff's office is allowed to take their vehicles elsewhere, and a lot live outside of Forsyth County. So again, it's just something to know that it's something we can discuss maybe the next fiscal year.
I think that's an opportunity.
I would agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chelsea? Thanks.
Agenda item number 9 is Chelsea's as well. It's a resolution authorizing the grant and execution of a utility easement to Duke Energy Carolinas LLC to construct and access utility infrastructure across a portion of Forsyth County-owned real property located at 100 Horizons Lane.
This item is a request from Duke Energies for an easement across county-owned property to install and maintain utility infrastructure and communication lines. This is to serve the new facilities being constructed by Horizons Residential Care Center, and this easement does include language which would require prior county approval if Duke needed to relocate the infrastructure within county property. However, the proposed easement plan does not have any of the infrastructure extending beyond Horizon's leased area. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Chelsea about that?
I hate to be nitpicky, but it looks like on the map that you've got a proposed underground cable route that's going smack through a utility building. They wouldn't have to do it that way.
This was developed with the contractor and Duke, so I can certainly inquire about why they picked this route.
I mean, if they swung just a little closer to that driveway, would avoid that. Anyway, just a thought. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, agenda item number 10 is Chelsea's as well. It's a resolution authorizing the grant and execution of a utility easement to the Yadkin Valley Telephone Membership Corporation to construct and access utility infrastructure across a portion of Forsyth County-owned real property located at 0 Tanglewood Park Road.
This is a request from Yadkin Valley Telephone Membership Corporation, who also owns Xyrus. They're requesting an easement of .182 acres on county-owned property at the Tanglewood Park Road, which is Tanglewood Park. This easement area is accessible by the Idols Road as well. And this is for the installation of an outdoor utility cabinet to establish a distribution fiber network for internet services that they are planning to expand their services that would serve the village of Clemens. And the easement also includes a maintenance agreement, which would require the grantee to fence in the easement area and tie into the existing fence line that we have on our county property boundary. And they would also require them to install a gate at the entry point off of Idols Road. Yadkin Valley Telephone Membership Corporation is proposing in consideration of $10,000 for the purchase of the easement. That is based on their previous market acquisitions, and we feel that's reasonable given the minimal impact to the county property and the service that they would be providing to the community. And Parks and Recreation staff have met with their staff, and Parks actually recommended and proposed this location for the easement and confirmed that it will not negatively impact the park property or any operations there at the park. Happy to answer any questions.
I've got one about that particular company. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are in the business of cable, and I don't know whether this is a part of. I'm not sure whether they're already selected by someone to be as in Clemens, for example, or to be the sole provider, out in that of I guess higher speed internet service is what I'm guessing this is. Because if there were multiple companies that wanted to do that, for example, we might get people bidding if it's, cable vendor A versus the Yadkin Valley folks versus vendor C, and say, if they're wanting to locate something, maybe they need to compete for that, a place where because essentially we're allowing a commercial enterprise that competes with other people to buy a section of of land from us, and somebody might be willing to pay more money for that than Yadkin Valley, for example, if there are multiple providers of that. But I don't know enough about that industry at all to wonder about that. But it did occur to me they're getting I think what they're paying is reasonable. I mean, you're kind of looking at about $55,000-$60,000 an acre, kind of price that they're paying for that land, which is probably, considering where it is, probably reasonable. But you see what I'm getting at? Do you know anything about that?
My understanding is it's going to or supposed to serve one of the new developments that is being constructed out there.
I'm sorry, say it.
My understanding is it's supposed to serve one of the new developments that's being constructed out there, but I can get some additional details from them.
Yeah, I'm just curious who else is providing service out in that area.
I'll ask.
Yeah, thanks.
Is that Riverview, that new development?
I think Riverwalk.
Riverwalk.
Riverwalk, yeah.
For 500 homes.
Any other questions for Emily? I'm sorry, Chelsea, excuse me.
What's the purpose that someone would want to buy a deed of easement rather than proposing to buy the land? I'm not interested in selling them anything, but I'm
not sure exactly what is going to go on the property, but an easement would mean we can continue to use the property as long as it doesn't interfere with whatever they're putting in. If we actually sold the land to them, we would have no use of it whatsoever. I believe Chelsea indicated it was minimally invasive or whatever terminology she used, but she could answer that better. But that's the general difference.
Well, a deed of easement, that's isn't that sort of permanent?
The easement part would be permanent. And so they have the ability to use that part of the property for their purposes. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what they're putting on the property, whether it's a pipeline or maybe you could answer that.
It's a utility cabinet, an exterior utility cabinet, and they'll be putting up a gate at the entry point, and then they needed some land to pull a few vans in and then turn around.
36 by 60 inch outdoor utility cabinet. So it's 5 by 3 metal box, I imagine, on a concrete slab that's switching gear, cable and stuff.
So where the actual cabinet is, obviously, we can't use that property for anything, but if there's some property around it, there could be joint use.
What is the distance from the current proposed location to the dead end at Yadkin River on Idols Road?
I have not measured that.
Well,
I will have to,
an estimate would do.
I have not looked into that. I will
Okay.
get that.
Good. Oh, I'm sorry. I was actually looking at that map. I think I'm good. So you can answer some of those by
I will-
Thursday.
Yes, I will get
which
some
would be great.
information. Yes, sir.
Any further questions for Chelsea?
Where's the specific location?
It borders Idols Road in your stuff. It's a little
Okay, I'll-
tiny
it's on
thing.
my
It
paperwork here.
borders Idols Road, and it is,
Between Ballard Lake Trail. I'll look at the map.
that is Mallard Lake Trail and Tankley. There we go.
I can also send an aerial view that gives a little more context on the location.
All right, that'd be good. A
We'll
map,
send an
a
email
blow-up
follow-up.
would be good. A blow-up
Yeah.
of that would be great on the thing. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
How much area did you say it was?
0.182 acres. So it's very small.
1 point?
0.182
Okay,
acres.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, just a rough estimate. I was able to pull up the map here. It's approximately 1.25 acres from where this is to the end of Idols.
Okay. Any further questions?
Thank you. Thanks
right.
for pulling that up, Chris.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 11 is a resolution authorizing execution of a lease agreement with Family Services for lease of 674 square feet of county-owned real property located at 725 Highland Avenue. Our property manager, Emily Mundy, will brief this item.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. The first item is for approval of a lease agreement between Forsyth County and Family Services for lease of 674 square feet of office space within the Family Justice Center located at 725 Highland Avenue. This is a nominal one-year lease beginning June 1st of 2025 and expiring May 31st of 2026. There is a $1 annual rent due to the partnership of the agency to provide services to Family Justice Center clients. And with this agreement, the landlord provides all maintenance and janitorial services, and the tenant simply provides their own internet and equipment. And the landlord may terminate this agreement for any reason or no reason with 30 days' notice.
Any questions for Emily?
Well, it looks like a pretty brutal lease agreement, with a $1 rent, but if it's
One whole
not,
dollar, yes.
if it's not paid on the first day, you're charged a nickel a month as a late fee.
Mr. Chairman, just a disclosure. My wife Daisy is currently serving as a volunteer member of the Family Services Board. I checked with our attorney, and it doesn't create a conflict of interest, so I can vote.
Agenda item number 12 is Emily's as well. It's similar. It's a lease agreement with Legal Aid of North Carolina for lease of 142 square feet in the Family Justice Center space.
Yes, this is for approval of a lease agreement between Forsyth County and Legal Aid of North Carolina for 142 square feet of office space within the Family Justice Center, also at 725 Highland Avenue. Again, this is a nominal one-year lease beginning June 1st of 2025 and expiring May 31st of 2026. For a whopping $1 annual rent due to the partnership of the agency to provide services to Family Justice Center clients. And again, the landlord will provide all maintenance and janitorial services while the tenant provides their own internet and equipment. And then the landlord may terminate this agreement for any reason or no reason with 30 days written notice.
Any questions for Emily on item 12?
And 13 is Emily's as well. It's a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement with Washington Perk and Provision Company, LLC, for a lease of 600 square feet of county-owned real property located at 660 West Fifth Street, the Central Library.
So this is for approval of a lease agreement between Forsyth County and Washington Perk and Provision Company, LLC, for the 600 square feet of cafe space located within Central Library. This is also a one-year lease beginning August 1st of 2025 and ending July 31st of 2026. Both the landlord and operator have the option to terminate with a 30-day written notice. This lease agreement for the operation of the cafe within the Central Library also includes some cafe equipment for use during the term of the agreement and a base rental amount of $250 per month plus 2.5% of the previous month's profits is due on the first day of each month. Additionally, each quarter, the operator will pay an additional $500 if quarterly profits exceed $20,000. There's a maximum of 4 possible payments per year. And in this agreement, the county will provide all maintenance and utilities to the physical space. The operator will provide all janitorial services as well as maintenance and cleaning of equipment, including the county-provided equipment. And this was sent out using city-county purchasing to solicit responses. The bid opened on March 7th, and there was a mandatory pre-bid meeting on March 17th, and bids closed on April 4th. And there were 12 businesses present for the pre-bid meeting, which was a wonderful turnout, and we received 2 responses. Those responses were evaluated by a committee of Deputy Manager Kyle Haney, Deputy Manager Denise Price, Yolanda Bolden, Chelsea Swaim, and myself, who all unanimously recommend awarding to Washington Perk and Provision Company, LLC. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Would this be a second location for them, or are they moving?
This is going to be a second location. Actually, it may even be, I guess, a third because they also own and operate Recess, which is right down the street from our building and from the new courthouse.
Very nice. Okay.
Did they provide in their kind of bid sort of evidence of their cash, their expected sort of sales, so that you kind of get an idea what that 2.5% or the, and I guess it's 2.5% on the last quarters, and then you're going to add 500 if it exceeds 20,000 in a quarter.
In a quarter, yes, sir. In their response, they did provide their operation expenses and a gross and net revenue. They are anticipating for the first quarter, a net revenue of $3,500. Actually, each quarter, a net revenue of $3,500.
Hang on one second. I mean, what I'm kind of getting at is, we would be better off just giving, come up with a commercial lease dollar per square foot for 600 square feet instead of getting into all this stuff. But if we've got some equipment, what kind of equipment do we have in that area? It's kind of a little kitchen area, so I suspect there's a refrigerator or something back there.
There is. So there's a refrigerated display case. There is a fancy coffee machine. There's a cash register. There are tables and chairs in the cafe area. So there are various items that actually were used by Moji Coffee, and before that, the previous cafe that was in that space, that have all been just sitting and being used by everyone. So they're still there.
Yeah, I'd been doing a little arithmetic on that. So just from what you said, it looks like it would equate, that 600 square feet would be about a $7.33 a square foot lease over a year. I use their quarterly amounts, 2.5%, it's not exceeding the 20, and I use their $250 a month piece, and ended up with a total and divided by 600, about $733. I would imagine the lease value is probably about it's probably no more than $8 to $10 a square foot, I wouldn't think. Maybe that's not too bad. I don't know, I was thinking of something that might be a little easier.
Easier to keep track of, yes.
And might be, and we need to kind of double check what's the going rate for that kind of work. I mean, it is pretty nice because there's no heating and air conditioning, no operational costs, there's no anything.
Right,
I mean, you got a customer base right there, although it's not huge necessarily, so there's a little on that, but you could walk right in off the street.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I just think we got to look carefully at all these little things. We're, looking at money.
Well, I think one of the things we liked about them is they were actually realistic about how much money they would make, whereas some other vendors think they're going to make $1 million in this space. And so I think they were realistic with about $3,500 if they're lucky, and, they already have a larger coffee shop. Kyle Haney can speak a little bit more to kind of where the market is in terms of the square footage.
Yeah, well, one of the things we requested was for them to put in their projections about what they had. Obviously, in the past, we've had vendors who utilize the space that we've had to subsidize. We know it's a little bit of a difficult space, so that's why we were really looking for the best offer, which is the one that we received.
These are the same guys that their main downtown shop is on 4th Street, and I think they still operate their original location on Acadia Avenue. The name of the company is Playoff in Washington Park, which is their original location.
Yes, sir, and they're actually going to utilize their main facility. They'll do some of the sandwiches there and deliver them here, so this will be at a satellite location.
Okay.
Other questions for Emily? Kind of interesting to monitor that success.
If they're late on a lease payment here, it's a whopping $12, right?
Well, they have a little bit larger rent amount, yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda items 14 and 15 are refunds by the interim tax assessor collector. 14 is in the amount of $23,901.37, and 15 is $1,060.43. And agenda item number 16 is a resolution approving the tax collector's annual settlement for fiscal year 25 and prior years. Mike Pollock, our interim tax assessor collector, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This resolution approves the tax collector's annual settlement for fiscal year 2024-2025 and prior years from the period of July 1st, 2024 through May 31st, 2025. John Burgess's retirement necessitates this settlement in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 105-373D. The statute states, when a tax collector voluntarily resigns, the tax collector shall, upon the last day of office, make full settlement for all taxes in the tax collector's hands for collection. The approval of this settlement does not relieve the former tax collector or his bondsman of any liability. An electronic copy of this settlement was sent to you this afternoon. In July, a settlement for the entire year will be presented to the Commissioners. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mike?
Thank you, Mike. And agenda item number 17 is our report. It's the April contribution-based benefit cap report. And that's all of our agenda items, Mr. Chair.
I have one question on that report, and maybe this is something that our attorney can answer. On the amounts, if people continue to work, I mean, there's one on there that's a very large amount. And if a person continues to work, it's likely that if it's not building, it will actually go down, because it's kind of actuarially based on their age, right? About how, like if they retired now, it would be this much, but in 5 years, it's going to be less, right?
Yes, it's very complicated, but there is a strong factor based on your age. The logic is you're going to live longer in retirement, and so people who get the highest spiking numbers are those who are retiring at age 52 or something like that. So, but to answer your question, it's more complicated. If somebody earned a lot of money, I mean, like 2 or 3 times their salary for a couple of years, it's hard for that to ever go away. But the longer you work, it will tend to go down if your salary goes down. If your salary keeps going way up, it could go up. But age, as you get older, that will naturally make the spiking amount go down somewhat.
Got it. Got it. Any other questions or anything for the good of the order? We're good? All righty, we are